Hi, I'm Charles, and you're watching The State of the Republic.
We begin this week with some foreign policy news. The North Korean government has begun reaching out to Republican analysts in the United States in order to try to obtain some help in deciphering Trump's actions. Trump is so unstable that even North Korea is thinking that he can't possibly be serious. According to Secretary of State and cowboy oil man Rex Tillerson, the United States is now directly in contact with North Korea and is aiming to defuse tensions. The United States has decided to publicly warn against travel to Cuba and to withdraw all non-essential diplomatic personnel from the country. This decision comes after health problems were reported by U.S. diplomats in the country relating to possible sound attacks. The source of the attacks is currently unknown, and the Cuban government is cooperating with investigative efforts. The Kurdish government in Iraq this week held a referendum on independence, which won with 92% of the vote. Other governments in the region have not reacted favorably, with the Iraqi central government, Iran, and Turkey all threatening military deployments in the area. The administration this week also decided to expand its travel ban to include restrictions on travel from even more countries, incorporating Chad, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Somalia, Libya, Yemen, and Iran. The restrictions on Chad in particular were unusual, as Chad's government has been of enormous help in the war on terror, deploying substantial ground troops to other nations to help fight the terrorist group Boko Haram. On the other hand, Senators Ben Cardin and John McCain have complained that the administration has failed to enforce the bipartisan sanctions on Russia that were passed previously this year. So, Trump is busy screwing our allies while protecting those who interfered with America's presidential election. On the domestic front, our glorious idiot continued his efforts to fight black athletes' right to protest. The efforts have been proven to be ineffective, as much of the public, and indeed even the sports team owners, have decided with the athletes. Trump has also screwed up his administration's response to the crisis in Puerto Rico, with the response being extremely slow and insufficient. The administration has deployed far less resources than needed, and for some time refused to lift the Jones Act to allow more supplies to get to the island. Trump chose to respond to the criticism of his response by taking to Twitter to attack the mayor of San Juan, Carmen Cruz. For the record, this is what the mayor has been doing. House Democrats are already calling for hearings into the failure of the response. The Trump administration was shaken by an even larger barrage of ethics scandals this week. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao was revealed to have retained and not disclosed a substantial investment in Vulcan Materials, a building company, and the fact that she did not even disclose that fact, that she owned stock in the company, suggests that she may have been steering contracts to the company in order to pad her own investments. Also this week, we now have at least 5 major administration officials who have been caught abusing government resources for personal reasons. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, VA Secretary David Shulkin, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and HHS Secretary Tom Price have all been caught with their hand in the till. Shulkin used government funds to help pay for his commercial flight to Europe for what was essentially a vacation with his wife. Pruitt used government funds to pay for private planes to go back to home to Oklahoma, and also had the EPA pay $25,000 to install a privacy booth in his office. Zinke used government money to pay for private jet travel and used military jets for himself, including flights between 2 Caribbean islands. Mnuchin used government money to pay for private planes for himself, and of course used a government flight to get to Fort Knox to see the previous solar eclipse, and try to get another government jet for his honeymoon. Tom Price, in particular, used to rail against expensive travel by government officials while he was a congressman, and has since racked up nearly $1 million in travel costs while using private and military aircraft. Price has since resigned from his position at HHS in disgrace in the aftermath of the revelations. In addition, the acting head of the DEA resigned this week over conflicts with administration policy on drugs emanating from Jeff Sessions. In more hypocrisy news, this week saw more revelations about White House officials using private email accounts for government business. An internal White House investigation has been launched, and the Senate Intelligence Committee sent a letter reminding Jared Kushner, one of the people who was using a private email, that they wanted all email content, including private accounts. In addition, the NSA warned White House staff previously against using private email accounts on security grounds. So I guess we should all be chanting, lock them up, just like they were chanting about Hillary. Now, moving on to congressional news. This week saw a furious last-minute push by the Republicans to pass Graham-Cassidy, their latest ACA repeal bill. This version was actually worse than some of the previous versions, and attempted to pass it without a CBO score on the effects of the legislation. However, the legislation was withdrawn after Senators Rand Paul, John McCain, and Susan Collins all came out against it. Today, the reconciliation rules for such a legislation expire, so it looks like the ACA is safe for now. Senators Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray have gone back to the drawing board for efforts for a bipartisan fix for the ACA. After their defeat on health care, Republicans have instead opted to move on to their tax proposal. As a precursor to tax legislation passing through reconciliation, they have to pass a budget, and the new Republican budget is just as bad as we thought it would be. There are substantial cuts planned for the federal workforce and employee benefits, college aid, public assistance programs, and even a $450 billion cut to Medicare. These cuts are supposed to lay the groundwork for the Republicans' terrible tax so-called reform proposal. The proposal in question would eliminate the estate tax and the alternative minimum tax and the deduction for state and local taxes, and would massively lower taxes on the rich and corporations while raising taxes on average working Americans. In even worse news, in their zeal for throwing people off healthcare and cutting taxes for the rich, the Republicans have allowed the Children's Health Insurance Program to expire. In electoral news, right-wing extremist Roy Moore won the Alabama Republican Senate primary. Moore won over the incumbent appointee Luther Strange, the candidate backed by Trump, and Trump has since deleted his tweets in support of Strange. Moore is a religious nut who has been twice kicked off the Alabama Supreme Court for refusal to obey federal court orders. Moore has previously stated that 9/11 was God's punishment for America turning away from God, and that the Sandy Hook shooting occurred because they were not following God's law. Moore also failed to disclose $50,000 to $150,000 in income on his Senate ethics form. Moore is running for the Senate seat against Democratic nominee Doug Jones, a former U.S. attorney who prosecuted the people responsible for the Centennial Olympic Park bombing and those responsible for the 1963 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham. Doug Jones is currently polling only 6 points behind Roy Moore, so let's get out the vote and elect Doug Jones for Senate. This week also saw the retirement announcement for Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, current chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. His retirement comes after significant rumors about a possible primary challenger to his right. Corker's retirement opens up a Senate seat in Tennessee and could potentially mean a possible pickup for the Democrats if everything goes to plan. The newly minted Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch, also came under fire for campaigning for Mitch McConnell in violation of traditional rules on justices not interfering in politics. There were also new revelations about the 2016 election. Election systems in 21 states were revealed to have been the targets of Russian hacking during the cycle, including the state of Wisconsin. In an even greater sign that the election was not legitimate, a study determined that Wisconsin's discriminatory voter ID law kept 9,000 to 23,000 registered votes from the polls in the two largest counties in the state alone. Trump only won the state by 22,748 votes. The study in question did not take into account the people who did not register because they thought they didn't have the right ID. And finally, the Russia scandal has continued to drag on further. Steve Bannon was revealed to have attempted to plant a mole at Facebook to help the Trump campaign's efforts in 2016. This comes after increasing revelations about Russia's use of social media during the campaign to promote Trump and undermine Clinton. This week saw the suspension of more Russia-linked accounts on Facebook, and revelations about Russia running ads supporting Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein in an effort to divide the left against Hillary Clinton. Twitter and Facebook are coming under increasing scrutiny from congressional investigators about their role in the campaign. The House Intelligence Committee had Trump aide Roger Stone testify in a closed session this week. However, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, has apparently unrecused himself from the Russia investigation, as he has been sending subpoenas by himself related to the scandal. Very strange. Meanwhile, Mueller's investigation is also proceeding at a steady pace. Mueller is getting more and more information in the investigation. He has received financial information relating to the scandal from the IRS, and is also investigating donations from a Russian-linked oligarch to Trump and other Republicans, including Scott Walker and Mitch McConnell. Mueller is also reportedly talking with one of the sources in the Steele dossier, of Golden Showers fame. Pence is apparently smart enough to see the writing on the wall, and he sent a lawyer to meet with Mueller's investigators last summer to express a willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Trump is probably going to end up in jail. Well, that does it for this week's news.
Thank you for watching the program. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting content.